Hello, and welcome to Lengold English, Golden Stories, Fluent Future. Our mission is to take difficult subjects and make them accessible, no matter your English level. When you think of Nintendo, what comes to mind? Mario jumping through colorful worlds? The joy of playing Zelda? Happy families gathered around a Switch console? But what if I told you that behind every Mushroom Kingdom and every princess rescue, there's a dark story of betrayal, corporate warfare, and ruthless business decisions that destroyed lives? Here's what makes this perfect for you. While you're discovering secrets that even die-hard Nintendo fans don't know, you're also learning natural English. You're learning vocabulary like betrayal, ruthless, and devastating in context. You're hearing how native speakers build complex stories. You're training your ear to understand real English rhythm and flow. This is the Lengold English method. You forget you're learning because you're too interested in the story. Your brain takes in English naturally while your mind is blown by what you're discovering. Today, I'm going to show you the dark side of Nintendo that they don't want you to know, the side that proves a powerful truth. Success in business often requires impossible choices. Choices that keep CEOs awake at night. Choices that turn heroes into villains. This story will change how you see success and failure. If you want more inspiring stories that improve your English and your mindset, subscribe now and let's grow together.
Our story doesn't begin with video games. It begins in 1889 in Kyoto, Japan, with a man named Fusajiro Yamauchi making handcrafted playing cards. For nearly 80 years, Nintendo was just a card company. Nothing special, nothing revolutionary. But in 1949, everything changed when a young man named Hiroshi Yamauchi took control of the company at just 21 years old. His grandfather was dying, and someone needed to save the family business. Hiroshi was different. He wasn't satisfied with cards. He had a vision that seemed impossible. Transform Nintendo into something the world had never seen before. The first dark decision. Here's where the darkness begins. Hiroshi's first move as president. He fired every single manager who had been loyal to his grandfather. Every single one. Why? Because loyalty to the past meant death for the future. He needed people who shared his vision, not his grandfather's memory. Family members begged him to reconsider. He refused. This is the first lesson of Nintendo's dark side. Sometimes growth requires killing what came before, even if it hurts the people you love. The failed experiments. Throughout the 1960s, Hiroshi tried everything. He opened the taxi company, failed. He started a love hotel chain, failed. He created instant rice, failed. He tried toy companies, failed. Each failure cost money. Each failure hurt employees who believed in him. Each failure made people whisper, "That crazy Yamauchi will destroy Nintendo." But here's what nobody understood. Hiroshi wasn't failing. He was learning. Each disaster taught him something valuable. Each closed business brought him closer to understanding what Nintendo could become. By 1970, Nintendo was bleeding money. The company was dying. Hiroshi had one last chance. Part 2. The Struggle. Building an Empire on Broken Dreams. The video game gamble. In 1977, Hiroshi hired a young artist named Shigeru Miyamoto. This decision would change gaming forever, but it came with a price. Miyamoto wasn't a programmer. He wasn't an engineer. He was just an artist who loved to draw. Other executives called him Hiroshi's pet project. They said he was wasting company resources. But Hiroshi saw something nobody else could see. Imagination was more valuable than technical skill. In 1981, they released Donkey Kong. It became a massive hit in arcades. Finally, success. Finally, proof that video games were Nintendo's future. But success brought new enemies. The Universal Studios betrayal. Here's where the story gets really dark. Universal Studios sued Nintendo, claiming Donkey Kong was stealing from King Kong. They wanted all of Nintendo's profits. They wanted to destroy the company. Most companies would have settled. Most CEOs would have paid and moved on. Not Hiroshi. He hired a brilliant lawyer named Howard Lincoln and decided to fight. The legal battle cost millions. It lasted years. Employees were terrified. What if Nintendo lost everything? During depositions, Universal's lawyers attacked Miyamoto personally. They called his work copied trash. They said he had no talent. They tried to break his spirit. Miyamoto would later say those courtroom days were the darkest of his life. He considered quitting. He thought maybe he was the problem. But Hiroshi never doubted him, not for a second. In 1984, Nintendo won. Universal had to pay Nintendo $1.8 million in damages, but the victory came with scars that never fully healed. Second lesson. The path to success is full of people who want to see you fail. Your job isn't to avoid the fight. Your job is to win. The Nintendo Entertainment System. Controlling everything. In 1985, Nintendo released the NES in America. The video game industry had just crashed. Companies like Atari had failed badly. Retailers refused to stock video games anymore. But Hiroshi had a plan. A dark, brilliant, controlling plan. He would create a system where Nintendo controlled everything. Every game had to be approved by Nintendo. Developers had to pay Nintendo a fee for every cartridge made. Nintendo could reject any game they didn't like. This policy made Nintendo incredibly powerful. It also made them incredibly hated. The developer rebellion. Small game developers started suffering. Companies like Konami and Capcom wanted to make more games, but Nintendo limited them to just 5 games per year. Why? To maintain quality control, to prevent market flooding. But developers saw it differently. They saw controlling behavior. They saw greed. So they found loopholes. Konami created a fake company called Ultra Games to release more titles. Other developers did the same. It became an industry-wide rebellion. Hiroshi's response? He tightened restrictions even more. He made examples of companies that tried to cheat the system. He showed no mercy. Employees at Nintendo questioned these decisions. Are we the bad guys? They would ask in private meetings. Are we hurting the industry we claim to love? Hiroshi's answer was always the same. We're protecting quality. Without control, there is chaos. Without standards, there is another crash. Third lesson. Sometimes being the guardian means being the villain. Sometimes protecting the future means controlling the present, even when people hate you for it.
The betrayal of Sony. Now we arrive at perhaps the darkest chapter in Nintendo's history. The chapter that created their biggest competitor. The chapter that still haunts Nintendo executives today. In 1988, Nintendo partnered with Sony to create a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo. Sony was excited. They saw this as their entry into gaming. They invested millions into development. Ken Kutaragi, a Sony engineer, poured his heart into the project. He called it the Super Disc. He believed Nintendo and Sony would change gaming together. But Hiroshi grew worried. The contract gave Sony too much control. Sony would own the CD format. Sony would get a share of every game sold. Nintendo would become dependent on Sony. So in 1991, at the Consumer Electronics Show, with thousands of people watching, Nintendo made an announcement. They were canceling the Sony partnership and partnering with Philips instead. Sony executives found out the same way everyone else did, by watching Nintendo's press conference on TV. Ken Kutaragi stood in the audience, devastated. Years of work, gone. Millions of dollars, wasted. Trust, destroyed. Howard Lincoln, who delivered the announcement, would later admit, "I knew we were burning a bridge that day. I just didn't know we were creating a monster." The birth of PlayStation. Ken Kutaragi went back to Sony broken but determined. He convinced Sony executives to let him create a gaming console independently. They agreed, mostly because they wanted revenge on Nintendo. In 1994, the Sony PlayStation launched. It was everything the Super Disc could have been, but better. It was sophisticated. It was cool. It attracted older gamers. And it destroyed Nintendo's dominance. By 2000, PlayStation had sold 102 million units. The Nintendo 64, released 2 years later, sold only 33 million units. Nintendo had gone from controlling 90% of the market to barely 20%. Inside Nintendo, people were devastated. Hiroshi had made a decision to protect the company, and it had backfired badly. Shigeru Miyamoto said in a rare, honest interview, "We created our own competition. We had everything we needed for success in our hands, and we threw it away because we were afraid." Fourth lesson. Fear of losing control often causes you to lose more than you ever imagined. Sometimes the safe decision is the most dangerous decision. Part 3. The Transformation. Redemption through Innovation. The Wilderness Years. The late 1990s and early 2000s were brutal for Nintendo. PlayStation dominated. Xbox entered the market. Nintendo seemed irrelevant. The GameCube, released in 2001, was a technical marvel. It was powerful. It had amazing games, but it sold poorly. Only 21 million units. Gaming magazines wrote obituaries for Nintendo. "The giant has fallen," they declared. "Nintendo is finished." Inside the company, morale collapsed. Developers left for Sony and Microsoft. Investors demanded change. Board members questioned everything. But something interesting was happening. A new leader was emerging. Satoru Iwata, a different kind of CEO. In 2002, Iwata became Nintendo's president. He was different from Hiroshi. He was a programmer first, a CEO second. He understood games from the inside.
More importantly, he understood something crucial. Nintendo couldn't compete on power anymore. They had to compete on innovation. But here's the dark part of the story. Innovation required sacrifice. The DS and the Wii, betting everything. In 2004, Nintendo announced the DS, a handheld with 2 screens and touch controls. Industry experts mocked it. Gimmicky, they said. Nobody wants 2 screens. Sony announced the PSP, a sleek, powerful handheld with beautiful graphics. Everyone expected Sony to dominate again. Then, in 2006, Nintendo announced the Wii, a console with motion controls that was less powerful than competitors. Again, experts laughed. Graphics matter, they said. Nintendo is out of touch. Microsoft and Sony released the Xbox 360 and PS3, both technical powerhouses. Everyone expected Nintendo to fail again. Iwata faced incredible pressure. Board members wanted Nintendo to make a traditional, powerful console. Investors worried the company was committing suicide. But Iwata made a speech that changed everything. He said, "We're not competing for the same customers anymore. We're expanding the definition of gamer. We're going after families, casual players, people who have never touched a controller." It was risky, it was different, it was Nintendo's last chance. The DS sold 154 million units. The Wii sold 101 million units. Together, they earned Nintendo more money than they had made in their entire history. Nintendo was back. Not just back, they were changing gaming again. But success came with a cost. Hardcore gamers felt abandoned. Third-party developers struggled to create games for Nintendo's unique hardware. The gaming community was divided. Nintendo's response? We're not trying to be everyone's favorite. We're trying to be someone's favorite. Fifth lesson. True innovation requires the courage to leave the crowd. You can't create the future by following what everyone else is doing. The dark side returned. The Wii U disaster. But darkness returned. In 2012, Nintendo released the Wii U, a confusing console that nobody understood. It sold only 13 million units. It was a terrible failure. Satoru Iwata did something unprecedented. He publicly apologized and cut his own salary in half. In Japanese business culture, this was the ultimate admission of failure. Critics attacked him relentlessly. Investors demanded he resign. The media wrote daily articles about Nintendo's coming death. And then, tragedy struck. The death of Iwata. In 2015, Satoru Iwata died from cancer at age 55. He had been working until the very end, developing the Nintendo Switch in secret. His death devastated Nintendo employees. Miyamoto cried openly at the funeral. Developers who had never met Iwata personally mourned him like a family member. But Iwata had left behind a gift, a completed plan for the Switch, a console that could be played at home and on the go. The Switch, Iwata's final victory. In 2017, Nintendo released the Switch. Industry experts were skeptical. It's not powerful enough, they said. It's too expensive. It's another gimmick. But the Switch became a phenomenon. It sold over 140 million units. It became one of the best-selling consoles of all time. Iwata never saw it, but his vision lived on. Sixth lesson. Your greatest impact might come after you're gone. Legacy isn't what you accomplish in your lifetime. It's what continues after you leave.
Now let me summarize the 5 most powerful lessons from Nintendo's dark journey. Lesson 1. Growth requires killing the past. Hiroshi Yamauchi fired everyone loyal to his grandfather because loyalty to the past prevents creation of the future. In your life, what old habits, relationships, or beliefs do you need to let go of to grow? Sometimes being faithful to your future means being ruthless with your past. Lesson 2. Winners fight when others settle. When Universal sued Nintendo, settling was easier. Fighting was risky, but settling would have meant accepting they were wrong. In your life, what fight are you avoiding because it's too hard? Remember, the battles you avoid fighting often define the success you never achieve. Lesson 3. Guardianship sometimes looks like control. Nintendo's strict control over developers made them hated, but it prevented another industry crash. In your life, are there areas where setting boundaries makes you unpopular but protects something valuable? Leadership isn't a popularity contest. Sometimes doing the right thing means being misunderstood. Lesson 4. Fear of loss causes greater loss. Nintendo's fear of Sony led them to betray the partnership, which created their biggest competitor. In your life, what opportunities are you destroying because you're afraid of losing control? The irony of control is this: the tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. Lesson 5. Innovation means abandoning the crowd. When Nintendo created the Wii and DS, everyone said they were crazy. They succeeded precisely because they stopped trying to compete on others' terms. In your life, are you trying to win a game that doesn't fit your strengths? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is change the rules entirely. This story teaches us that extraordinary results come from ordinary people who refuse to quit. Nintendo wasn't perfect. They made brutal decisions. They hurt people. They failed repeatedly. But they never stopped trying to create something meaningful. If this story inspired you, show it by liking this video. Comment below, what lesson from this story will you apply in your life? I read every single comment, and your answer might inspire someone else. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration today. Maybe they're facing a difficult decision. Maybe they're afraid to innovate. Maybe they need to know that even giants fall and rise again. Subscribe to Lengold English for more golden stories that improve your English and transform your mindset. Hit the notification bell because every story we tell here is carefully chosen to help you grow. Remember, every master was once a disaster. Every expert was once a beginner. Nintendo started as a card company and became a gaming empire. Sony created PlayStation because they were betrayed. The Switch succeeded because Iwata had the courage to imagine something different. Your story is still being written. The decisions you make today will echo for years to come. The choices you avoid will haunt you. The risks you take will define you. So I ask you again, what chapter will you start today? Will you let go of the past? Will you fight the battles that matter? Will you protect what's valuable, even when it's unpopular? Will you release fear's grip? Will you abandon the crowd to create something new? The answer to these questions will determine whether your story becomes a golden one. This is Lengold English, Golden Stories, Fluent Future. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep writing your story.